So it was just like that whole thing of like, I couldn't think of a better way to be ushered in by these legends who not only were able to give me a lot of game on how to move, what does longevity mean, how to like do things correctly. And even some of it was a lot more from just being in the room.
Yeah.
But it was like, it was awesome. And then I was like, oh, cool, this is dope. I got a record coming. Feeling myself. And Tommy Boy went bankrupt.
Let's get it started.
Double O.
Free range, motherfucker. Yeah. Check 1 2. It's your man Double O, and we're back with another week of the Free Range Podcast. On today's episode, I was able to catch up with my homie Kovas, aka Kovito, an artist that has found much success in alternative means, where everybody else kind of has this idea that major label success is the only way to win. He found that by creating and licensing music, he's been able to have a very fruitful and amazing and fulfilling career, and been able to be in big rooms, big sessions, and work with amazing artists like Demi Lovato, Taylor Swift, et cetera, et cetera. It's funny. We often talk about this weird misconception in the industry that if you don't do it the right way, that everybody thinks is quote unquote the right way, whether it be like getting a radio hit, getting on Billboard, that no one really pays attention to or respects the success in the same way. But I think that finally everybody else is catching up to what we've already been doing, which is knowing that hip hop is a language that can be spoken in many dialects, and it can find its way successfully into many different avenues. Don't forget, anything that you'd love to question, comment on, or say about the podcast, shoot me an email, freerangetalk@gmail.com. The brand new website is up, thefreerangepodcast.com. And follow Kovas on everything, at Kovas on Twitter, at Kovito on Instagram, and Kovas.tv for everything else. So, Kovas, let's get it. Let's talk about it.
We here.
Check 1 2. You're tuned into the Free Range Podcast, and I'm here today with another one of the homies. The reason that I even really started this podcast is because I feel like we oftentimes have these weird in-depth conversations about the industry and the machinations of it and what winning in the industry is.
Yeah.
And I've always been amazed at how you've been able to attack a alternative version of it and get out here and just been killing it.
I mean, it's all relative, killing it, Podcast game. This is crazy. I just realized that you were on my second podcast that will eventually see the light of day. I like that. That was a whole.
And you got the good. You got the good stories too.
Our episode's like 3 episodes stretched out. It's crazy. It was like a 3-hour, and it was like one of those Killer Mike, Joe Rogan interviews. So it will be coming. I swear to God, it'll be coming. It's just one of those things where it's like someone had came in and was like, I want to, this is a great idea. Let me help. Yeah. And then they did not help. And I'm like a year later, like, all right, I guess let me figure this back out.
You know what? Forget this for now. Let's start right there. Mm-hmm. Oftentimes when I talk to a lot of aspiring artists, a lot of people up and coming, that situation happens a bunch.
Yeah.
Where you have someone who comes and kind of sells a dream of time, and hopefully experience.
Yeah.
And so you delay what you may have done on your own in order to let that situation kind of unfold. Have you learned anything in terms of dealing with that? Are there indicators that you use to kind of pick and choose those people?
Yeah, I mean, for me, like I've always been on some read the room, the temperature and energy. I'm like really like keen on and susceptible to energy. So sometimes it's like, I'll know, like we do certain things because of convenience, right? Oh, this would be dope. This person might take this off my plate, da 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 da. But you kind of know, if I was to go back in time, I'd be like, I kind of knew that was gonna happen, and so I can be mad at the person, but I can really just be more mad at myself. But I think that there's a lesson in everything. Not to be like cliche or, it's funny because a lot of times like you hear me talk, I probably speak in a lot of platitudes and like a lot of like, man, I'm very optimistic. Right?
You have to be.
I'm a cynical optimistic person.
That's first. A cynical optimist.
Yeah. It's like the New York side comes out. I'm like, wait a minute. But I hope for the best.
Yeah.
But it's like one of those things where it's like sometimes it's like even in that process, it's like you learn two things. Sometimes you got to trust yourself more. And also you learn things out of it. Like even how I got to this point here, like I remember I was very fortunate. I got signed when I was like 16. We haven't
even gotten there yet, son.
I know, but this is like, but okay. So the thing is like, but there was a time when I was making beats and I was like signed to a management company, and I was always the young boy. I was baby bro, and there was like other producers, other songwriters, other mix engineers. It was a conglomerate. So it's like, here's an opportunity, like, oh, I'm gonna make these beats and someone's gonna be able to mix it and someone's gonna be able to write for it. Because at the time, all I knew how to do was make beats. Yeah. But, they were like, oh, no, I ain't got time to mix this, or I ain't got time to write on this. So what I would learn in that was like, how do I be more self-sufficient? How do I learn how to write the song on top of this? How do I learn how to top line on top of this? How do I learn how to mix the record to get it to a point where A&Rs and labels will be like, yo, this is dope. Yeah. So even in that moment where I could be mad, we're like, man, F them, they didn't want to be a part. I can also be like, yo, thank them, because if they didn't have that energy, I wouldn't have been able to be like, let me go out and figure out how to be self-sufficient.
So is that how you move on from those situations? And like even talking specifically about the podcast, when someone comes through and they kind of fail you, how do you just say, oh, my bad, this was on me and now I got to go just do it myself? Or is it a much longer struggle to figure out what to do next?
I think with any situation, you have two choices. You either can make it allow you to become bitter or become better. And that's it, right? It's like sometimes you have no control on what the other person would do, but you have control over how you can react to it. Like, it's like one of those things where it's like we could be in the club and someone could step on my sneaker and I can escalate it to a point where now we fighting and maybe it becomes even some dangerous shootout. Or I could, you could just be like, yo, he stepped on his foot. Okay, he's a little drunk, whatever. It's all good. Yeah. And sometimes that's hard, when you come from an environment that's like maybe lower middle class or, a poor environment, your only currency is respect. My family came from the third world. Your family came from the third world. It's like one of those things where it's like, if you don't have funds, you don't laugh stuff off as easily,
Yeah, because your cachet is almost built on your reputation and honor and all of those things.
Every fight in the hood starts from you disrespecting me. Every fight starts from that.
Yeah. That's interesting because it's definitely been something that I think I've had to really, over the last couple of years, get a hold on, is the idea that in almost every situation, you're stepping into a situation with somebody else, with a bunch of other people, that you have zero clue where they're coming into it. There's two things. You have zero clue how they're coming into it. You have no clue really about their background and how they've learned how to deal with situations, how they deal with situations in the past. You're just making an assumption really based on yourself. And how everybody thinks.
Right. You think they're going to move how you move.
Exactly. Then the other coldest part that I've really come to realize is that the world, as we see it, is only an approximation of our, the way we view it. Like, right. You and I are here, but the way that we may talk or think about things could be they kind of make sense, but they could be vastly different. The way you see color could be different. The way it averages out, and that's how we're able to communicate. Exactly it.
I mean, I think that there'll be a lot more empathy and compassion in the world if you realize that you looking at the world from your map, and your map came from your parents' experience, how they chose to raise you, the environment you grew up in, your friends, your family, the school system you went through. So all that information is how you shape and see the world. Yeah. So we could even go to the same school. We could even live down the same street, but our maps are going to be slightly different. So I think that a lot of people lose sight of that. Like, you know, like everybody's trying to do the best they can with what they got.
Exactly.
So if you start from that premise, it allow you to be less quick to anger, right? It allow you to kind of be like, oh, okay, right? That doesn't mean I'm perfect and I don't get mad and I don't want to vent and I'm like, oh man, you know, I have my moments where I want to take my shirt off and be like, who else want to fuck with Hollywood Cole, right? But you can't stay there.
Yeah.
Because it's not productive, it's not proactive, and it don't get you anywhere, right? You can use that as motivation to be like, okay, because they didn't want to know how to mix, I'm going to open up these books and I'm going to learn what EQing is and what compression is and what this does. I'm going to study greats. I'm going to have mentors from afar. I'm a big advocate, big proponent of having mentors from afar. Like, you don't necessarily have to even know your mentor. You know, like a lot of times it's like you could, especially now, it's like you got YouTube videos. You can sit there and study the greats. Like if I want to be the best basketball player, I need to be studying LeBron, Jordan, even Wilt Chamberlain. Mm-hmm. Like, if not, what am I doing?
Yeah, no, it's funny. Even close. So much of the mentorship I had, even with someone like Just Blaze, was him simply allowing me in the room. Mm-hmm. It wasn't, this is how you do this. This is how you do this. And this is how you do this. It was like, come observe, learn as much as you can, apply what you need to. But being allowed into the inner circle was what allowed me to improve by leaps and bounds, because I would take like, oh, that snare sounds like that, or that kick sounds like that, or that this is how he's controlling a session, or this is how he's getting one of the homies to play piano, or, you know, whatever it is. How can I apply that to what I'm already doing? Mm-hmm. And how can I take that framework and build it out? And, you know, it definitely wasn't one of those things where it's just like hand holding in any way.
Yeah.
But to jump back, let's talk about the beginning of your rap map. Right? Let's go back to the beginning of the map. So
Rappity rap.
So the assumption then is that you came into situations as a producer first?
No, it's funny actually. Well, to start it all the way back, my dad was a DJ. Wasn't like a known DJ, mm-hmm. just was like do neighborhood parties,
yeah,
play
my dad
reggae
was as well.
And then my grandfather was a musician, played in a bunch of bands in El Salvador and Guatemala, and played 7 instruments. Mm. So music was always around, and I was like in my mom's womb, I was hearing music. But one of the things I noticed early on is that I would hear music differently than other people. Like even my mom, I'd be like, man, this feels so orange. She's like, what does that mean? And at the time, I didn't know what it meant. But then like I later learned that was, oh, you have synesthesia, where it's like you see sounds as colors. And then I would do more digging, and I was like, oh, Mozart had this. And then I would look at certain contemporary people, and you know, Pharrell has it, Kendrick has it. I've heard, you know, it's just I feel like everyone has it. It's just unlocking it, right? Like there's chefs that have it. Mm-hmm. There's culinary cooks that have this thing. Like so, I think it's like your senses being tied together in a certain way. It's unexplainable. And I think that I just had a love for sound and sonics. And then like I would hear these records that were like these colors that were popping up. And then for me, it was just learning how to paint those colors. I started out as a rapper, was, you know, had a little rap groups and put together stuff. They always call me like big business, because I remember like I was like, yo, my homies was like, we start a rap group. I was like, yeah. And I went in the phone book. I was like, looking for studios. You're like, I would take it to the next step. I remember I bought a printer and a fax machine. No, a printer and a scanner. And I didn't have anyone to print anything or scan, but I just felt like searching and striving for more, right? I was always the self-starter, I guess, out of the crew. But I was also always the youngest one. So I would get baby bro'd a lot. So that's another one of the things I think people don't allow themselves to be baby bro enough. Everyone's trying to jump to be the man. And like sometimes it's like if you just be baby bro, you'll learn more. Yeah. You'll actually benefit and be able to like navigate in a better route because you'll get more information. Yeah. You know, be humble.
So you were big business baby bro.
Yeah.
And then
so then we found a producer. Producer was going to produce some stuff, and I would notice that like he had several artists that he was producing, and I noticed the other artists had like crazy beats. Like the beat he played, that was a new song I just did for such and such, and I'm like, yo, this shit is amazing. And then he'll give us our beat, and our beat would be like, tick, 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 tick. So I was like, I want those beats. Why is he not giving us those beats? Yeah. So I just was like, took it upon myself to like start making beats myself and like learning that process and found joy in that because my like big industry discovery was like, I had played my beats, my song, my demo for some people who work with De La. And I didn't even know they worked for De La at the time. They just looked important and they had their car. I was like, yo, I want to listen to my music.
You just ran up on people in their car?
It was a photo shoot for XXL, Greatest Day in Hip Hop.
Oh, okay.
And so I knew there was going to be a lot of rappers there.
For those that don't know, go look it up. There is a.
That's right. People don't know.
There's a double XL photo shoot called The Greatest Day in Hip Hop. That was a remake of a previous photo shoot. That
Gordon Parks.
Yeah, that was Greatest Day in Jazz.
Yeah, it was all jazz legends. So they recreated for the photo.
And it's
cover.
A super panoramic shot of like probably like 100 people or something crazy like that.
Yeah.
So you went up to it.
I was
with the demo.
With the records.
And you just ran up.
I know I'm gonna see somebody.
Yeah.
I'm gonna see somebody. But again, it's like it wasn't like a super thirsty thing. I was just kind of like filling it out, checking the temperature. What's the energy? And people had pulled up and da 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 da. And I was like, yo, I don't even know how I started engaging in the conversation, but I played the music. And I knew they started to like it because they started to turn it up. And I was like, yo, this is dope. Then they started to started rolling up some stuff. And I'm like, okay. And then out the door, Maceo from De La comes out. And he's like, yo. And he starts listening and they vibing out. And it's like, yo, who this? I'm like, me. Word? Who did the beat? Me. And they were like, oh, word? And they took the demo. And then that weekend, kind of forgot about it. And then Maceo called me up singing my rap. And so he was like, yo, come. And they had a situation. This was 2001. So I'm still kind of all green, just excited that somebody liked what I'm doing. Yeah. And it was funny because I ended up producing a record called Words and Verbs, which was the B-side of Ooh with Redman. And that was my first production. They gave me co-production credit. They didn't try to take my credit. And I rapped on it. Maceo let me get a verse. So it was just that whole thing of I couldn't think of a better way to be ushered in by these legends who not only were able to give me a lot of game on how to move, what does longevity mean, how to do things correctly. And even some of it was a lot more from just being in the room.
Yeah.
But it was it was awesome. And then I was like, oh, cool, this is dope. I got a record coming. And I was feeling myself. And Tommy Boy went bankrupt. So the record never came out. But I had a management company at the time, and they knew I was producing and I was doing all this stuff. The record that I was doing was very eclectic at the time. I remember Tom Silverman saying, who the fuck is going to buy this, right? And it was people were like, oh, this is you Kanye West before Kanye West in a sense. Yeah. And it's there's a Kanye story that ties back together, which is oh, wow, that's crazy. But they were like, yo, since you do stuff that feels R&B, on Tuesday, why don't you work with an R&B group? On Wednesday, work with a hip hop group. On Thursday, maybe do this rock thing. So in production, it allowed me to take on these different personalities and personas. Because when you're an artist, you gotta like lock in.
At least when you start.
At least when you start, you can't. You can gradually do the Taylor Swift and go from country to pop, but you can't be like, "Yo, he coming to polka record, fam."
No, that's what I always often tell a lot of young cats is like, if you look at Taylor, if you look at Miley, if you look at Rihanna, you look at any of them, like when you start, and I tell them that because I failed at this, because kids have all failed at this, whereas like start and be something so very specific that it's easy to define and people can go to you for that. And then when you expand your ideas, you can always come back to the original thing and no one's going to think the wiser. Rihanna can always go back to reggae. Taylor can always go back to country and no one's going to be like, this is weird.
Yeah.
To jump back to your story, so Tommy Boy Folds, that I assume is probably like the biggest, maybe earliest first of like one of these letdowns and setbacks that happens.
Yeah.
So what happens next?
Well,
how do you decide to kind of, because when I met you, you were definitely doing it. Just really doing it yourself and doing it on your own.
Yeah. It was one of those things where it's like, that's a setback, that's a letdown. And it's like that whole thing of like, you can either allow it for you to become better or better. And I'm also very like, what's the lesson in this?
Mm-hmm. Like, so from early on, like where did that come from?
I think maybe my grandmother, it's one of those things and then, my mom was like very like, my mom had me when she was 16. So we kind of grew up together. We were like more like brother and sister than like, and my mom would like read Tony Robbins books and we'd be in the hood listening to Unlimited Power, and I think even like, she's like, you gotta listen to this, baby, you gotta listen to this. I'm like, oh, what? And it's like, so I think that even subconsciously that was like kind of instilled in me, like, or even like a Les Brown, stuff like that, where it was like these things like, how do you take something? Because I sometimes, even if you look through history, if you look at successful businessmen, if you look at presidents, if you look at any field, usually the thing that was the setback was the thing that was the conduit for their big success. So a lot of time, even I read this book recently. I can't remember the name of the book, but it was saying how they write crisis. The word crisis in Japanese letter is danger and opportunity. So in every crisis, there's an opportunity, to be almost like a phoenix in a sense. And I think that sometimes you're given roadblocks or certain things to allow you to grow, to become a better person. Like, what are you really made of? What's your character?
Yeah.
And I think in general, like, it's like one of those things where it's like you're being tested. Like, there'll be some unscrupulous people that come your way. There'll be people that will talk and throw dirt on your name. There'll be people that will like stab you in the back. But it's like, how you choose to handle that is like, that's how you show your greatness, right? Or who you are as a person. It's easy to be great when you cool, but it's like Jordan scored 40 when he's sick with the flu,
Yeah. I also think it's actually practicing self-care. And I've really come to like, really think about this more and more. Grudges really only ever affect the person holding the grudge or the anger. Like, you're the person who's very angry while that other person that did you wrong is just living
life.
Exactly. They've gone on and they've done whatever. You're just there like, oh, woo. And so it's almost to me where it's just
and
like,
I can have a lot of grudges.
Yeah.
Life.
But it takes you to be able to let that go, because that is what allows you to continue forward in your goals, or else you get stuck in that time loop of that person that did you dirty. And I mean, how many people have you run into that have been some point along the journey, and when you have the conversation, they're always talking about like, yeah, man, this thing happened. And then they just keep talking about it over and over again. And it's just like, okay, but what did you do next? Like what, like that is a setback, but literally there are setbacks, every single day, every week, every month. How did you move past that? And sometimes people can't do it at all.
like I learned how to mix my records because nobody would mix my records. I could have a grudge on those people, but actually that was a great lesson. I learned how to write in top line and write these songs because the songwriters at the time that I was signed with didn't feel like I was worthy enough to write on my beats. Yeah. You know? So it's like in a lot of ways, it's like I thank them. You know, there's people that like have done things and I'm like, oh man, that's messed up. And you'd be like, well, but you know what? They allowed me to get back on track because maybe they were a distraction. Maybe the situation was not the right fit. You know, like I'm friends with a lot of my ex-girlfriends because it's like, yo, I look at it like we didn't work out, but I still, for some reason, I liked you as a person and you liked me as a person, and that shouldn't change even though romantically we didn't work out. But like, you know, if you did me dirty or you or you were like an opportunist or you were like a taker or something like that, it's like, yeah, that's a toxic situation. I don't want that in my circle.
Sure, no. But it does still come to some of the same stuff that we talked about earlier, which is kind of like understanding that whenever you cross paths with anybody, business, relationship, whatever, they're coming into it with a whole different set of map coordinates that may jive, may not jive with what you have going on. And oftentimes that's where there's so much tension, but you just kind of got to look at it like, no, well, that's the thing that they were on. And we had talked about this. I'm sure we've talked about this a bunch of times, especially dealing in LA and dating in LA. But, you know,
oh, LA.
Exactly. Dealing with
Randy Newman. We love it. No, not so much sometimes.
Dealing with the people that you think are genuine, and then 4, 5, 6 months later, they just ghosted you, and the next thing you know, they're just like, "Oh, you're in a Snoop video now. I see you in the, whatever."
You helped them to get to where they wanted to go.
Yeah, but I've learned, you know what? You got to wish those people well because it's so hard to make it. Whatever idea that it is, it's so hard to make it. And not that the decisions are good decisions, but it's so hard to make it that like if a person has the audacity to continue the journey forward, you just kind of got to be like, I'm not going to be a part of it, but kudos to you. Go do your thing. Hopefully it'll get you where you need to.
I wish people well. I feel like integrity trumps everything. And I feel like sometimes people will do things for the short-term gain and sacrifice long-term happiness.
Sure, but let's dig in on integrity a little bit because I feel like oftentimes going back to what you even talked about before, had you approached a situation like you grew up in Brooklyn, right? You could say, oh, this person scuffed my shoes or this person did me dirty. It was my integrity that made me react this way.
No, that's ego.
Yeah, but they're often extremely connected.
I mean, there might be some crossover, but I think for the most part...
I think people confuse the two often.
Definitely. Because I feel like integrity are the things that help you sleep at night. Integrity is knowing that you help your fellow man, that you didn't like throw someone under the bus for your own success. Integrity is doing the thing that you know is right. Like a lot of times people will forego doing the thing that they know is right for an opportunity. And it's like, there's all cautionary tales. There's Citizen Kane. There's movies that you could watch where it's like, there's people who have the hugest bank account and have everything. Yeah. And ain't happy. And there's people that have supposedly little and are very happy. So the thing is, it's like a lot of times people chase this idea and they'll cut their grandmother's throat for an opportunity, especially in some parts of the country.
Oh, yeah.
Of the world. And it's like, yo, but what does that opportunity really mean? And I've been privy to that where people will literally like stab me in the back or do some stuff for a look or for an opportunity or for some chance to feel significant. And it's like, in the long run, though, what does that mean? It's almost like there's gonna come a come a day. I mean, it's like my grandmother would say, it's like gonna become a day. It may not be today, it may not be tomorrow, but there's gonna be some day you look up in the mirror and you be like, man, and that shit's gonna weigh on you like crazy.
You hope. Here's why
I feel like they hit, even if they don't admit it to me, they're gonna feel it.
See, I only slightly disagree with that because there are so many bad people that win. Like there are like the situation
from the outside, they look like they winning, but they might have cancer. They might have a loved one they died. They might have.
But
what's winning?
Okay,
that's the other
let's
thing.
be real.
What's winning?
You know, like I agree with you. For me, to be able to sleep at night, to be able to do certain things, what I feel is right to myself and to others is paramount oftentimes to the check or any of that sort of stuff. But I also have to be real with myself and know that there are people that choose the other direction and are super successful as well.
I get it, but I don't know if they're happy.
Maybe.
So
not.
For me, it's like, so that's the other thing too. Like I think the epiphany that I had is, so I had the opportunity to like, you know, work with some pretty big names and produce or be in the studio or go on tour with certain people. And I realized like, oh man, they have the thing that people coveted, but they're not necessarily happy. They're mad depressed. They can't find a real relationship. They don't know if someone's dealing with them because they genuinely like them or if it's someone that's trying to get something from them. You know, it's Citizen Kane. Yeah. So
explain that for
people who don't know. Yes. I took film and film history. So Citizen Kane is a movie that's renowned in history of film circles. It was written and directed by Orson Welles. Orson Welles is a very prolific filmmaker, but the storyline is basically this guy. It's in reverse, and not to have any spoilers. It's with the first Quentin Tarantino. It's in reverse, but it's about this guy who seemingly has it all, very rich, has done well for himself, owns everything, but you realize that the hole that he's trying to fill is never filled with any of these materialistic things, and he doesn't really have any real friends, and he doesn't have all these other things. I mean, it's Great Gatsby is another example of that. Yeah. Like, I think that, you know,
but Citizen Kane was about what's his name, right? The magnate, newspaper magnate.
Was it Howard Hughes?
No. He's got the freaking castle here.
Oh yeah, Hearst,
yeah. William Randolph Hearst.
Yeah. And it's like one of those things too, where it's like, you know, you could look at behind the music, you could look at true Hollywood stories, you could look at, there's a lot of people who have things that people coveted, and you'd be like, when you dig down, you'd be like, oh man, that's messed up.
Yeah.
Because I think that it's two things, right? I think that if you always got to do that check in with yourself of what and why. What do you want and why? And really why? Like dig down deep. Maybe ask yourself why 5 times, right? It's like, oh, I want to have $1 million. Why? Because I want to have security. I want to be able to be self-sustaining. Why? Yeah. Because I want to make sure that I'm able to take care of my family. Why? Because I want to make sure that they are safe and they don't have to go through the things that I went through. But then someone else's why might be like, I want to have bottle service. I want to have models around me. Like everybody's why is different. Yeah. But it's like being honest with yourself on your why. And I think there's like the hierarchy of needs, 6 human needs. And if we're always checking that, you can understand any situation. Even when someone's coming from a negative point of view, if you're like analyzing what are those 6 human needs and in this moment, what are they trying to get?
Yeah.
Because the 6 human needs is significance, love, growth,
I know security somewhere in there.
Security, but also variety.
Yeah.
And 6, I believe, is you want to feel like you're a part of something and you want to contribute, right?
Yeah.
Like that goes back to our tribal instincts. That's why people will like want to be a part of the Supreme Crew, or people will be like, yo, I'm Republican, or people will be like, oh, yo, I'm Wu-Tang. You know what I'm saying? Like,
they buy into something that makes them feel good about themselves.
Want to be a part of a tribe.
Yeah.
Yeah. Association.
So to jump back a little bit back to the music. So as you're dealing in this fun industry and navigating a bunch of
Is it fun?
broken promises and but still making headway.
Yeah.
Eventually you find kind of like
Some
you
success?
but you find a placement. What was your first licensing placement?
Oh, okay. So I was producing and songwriting for other people, and I was starting to feel like, affinity for that. I was like, oh, this is dope. I could just do this.
Yeah.
But I still had some things I wanted to kind of say as an artist. So I was like, oh, I'll just do things for fun. And I remember that in between sessions, I would because I was writing, now I was songwriting for people. And then sometimes I would write songs that maybe didn't fit the artist I was working with. So I just kind of put that in the tuck. And it was a song called Wax On, Wax Off, which actually was a bit of a joke when I first did it. It was like, oh, everybody, I'm going to do a dance record. You got to have a dance record.
Yeah.
And people were like, yo, that's actually dope. And somebody was like, yo, let me get a copy of that. And at the time, I wasn't like trying to get a deal with it. I wasn't trying to monetize anything.
Yeah, you just made it.
I just made it. Like, yeah, cool. SoundCloud wasn't up and running at the time. So it was like, that was the SoundCloud. I burned you a CD.
Yeah.
And it just got around. And I remember I got a random phone call. Shouts out to Rafi from EA Sports. And they was like, yo, I really like this. I want to put this on the Madden video game. I was like, word? So then it was like this almost like backwards thing where it was like, that's coming out. Mm-hmm. And that's a huge game. It ended up selling.
That was Madden 09.
Oh,
so our first placements are on the same Madden.
Yeah. So then it was like, oh, I should probably put an album out or do this record. And then at the time I was like, well, I kind of know the people at iTunes, they starting this thing. Let me just go ahead and put it out through iTunes. Yeah. And I remember at the time, everybody laughed at me like, oh, you ain't got a real label. You go on to iTunes. And it's like one of those days where it's like, sometimes it's like, I pride myself on being ahead of the curve. And I was like, yo, I'm going to just why wouldn't I do that? It's direct. I make all the profit because that's the whole thing, right? A lot of people live for other people's eyeballs. They want to look like the man. They don't want to actually be the man. They want to look like, they doing it, but they don't want to do the work. For me, I'm like, yo, I actually enjoy doing the work. Like I don't really care about bottle service like that. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So, but again, my why is different, right? My what may be the same as a lot of other people, but my why is different. Like, everything else is gravy. Like I love being able to think of a topic and compose music around it and think about, oh, this key, this chord progression feels sad. And this is because I want to provoke this emotion. And then like 2 hours later, I got something that didn't exist before.
Yeah, you solved the problem that was in your head. Which is, how do I get this thing out?
Leonardo da Vinci once said, music is the shaping of the invisible. So it's like, for me, it's like, I'm always fascinated by like, how could I create something that didn't exist? And then it's like, of course I want people to enjoy it. I want it to move people and touch people, but it's not like I'm doing it to be like, I'm the man, fam. Look at me, bottle service. And it's like, when I was younger, I feel like I was confused because I thought that's the path that you're supposed to go. I guess this is what everybody's doing. But then I realized that doesn't really make me happy. I don't really feel fulfilled from that. It's kind of empty. So I think that I had that realization, like a little, like I had the quarter life crisis.
What up, what up? I hope everybody's been enjoying the conversation thus far. Kovas has some amazing insights on how to get things done without being so ridiculously overconfident that you turn people off. So make sure you check in, take some pointers and all of that. Once again, you can follow him on IG at Covito, on Twitter at Kovas. His website is kovas.tv. And we have a new website. It's just a section of double0 we have thefreerangepodcast.com. I don't know who has freerangepodcast.com, but somebody does. But check it out. Let us know how you feel. freerangetalk@gmail.com. I look forward to hearing from you. Look forward to getting your comments on how the episodes have been going. You know, would love to be able to provide some more insight into making the show better. Back to the conversation.
So Madden 09 is the first placement. Wax On, Wax Off goes to, did you do TuneCore or did you do the direct with iTunes?
Actually, I think for that first one, I did direct. And then I was on TuneCore super early. I actually met the owner.
Okay. TuneCore, for people that don't know, is a digital aggregation service that you pay a certain amount of money and you can just get your music up on everything. Yeah. So it's something that basically everybody should be doing if they're figuring out
and I
how
forget
to get their
the guy's
music up
name
somewhere.
Right now, but he also managed Pixies. And so I remember when I spoke to him, because I'm a music nerd too, right? So it's like, for me, it's like, you know, and being a DJ, it's like I was into hip hop, but I was also into rock. I was into like alt rock. I was into like punk. And so I knew about the Pixies. So when he was like, this hip hop kid's talking to me about the Pixies, I think he was a little taken aback, because I was always like, if I like something, I would like consume it. Like I'd be like, oh, I want to hear the rest of their albums. Then I want to hear who they were influenced by. If someone would mention, I remember Pharrell talked about Rolling Stone's Sympathy for the Devil, and I was like, oh, word, let me go back and listen to that. Then let me go back and listen to their anthology, who inspired them. So, you know, it was an insatiable appetite for learning all these different things. So like that was like, so yeah. So I met the guy from TuneCore.
So I want to get back to the music placement game, because I definitely think that's a core of what I really want to talk about to get people involved. But you actually touched on a question that I was going to ask anyway. How do you make the decision between learning and doing? Like, you can go down the rabbit hole. And I think sometimes what happens now is a lot of people, especially because we have all this information at our fingertips, can go down this rabbit hole of learning. It actually ends up becoming almost experiencing people do the things that you want to do, but then you don't turn around and do what you just learned. How do you have like some sort of time management within your week and day where you're like, okay, I'm gonna spend 2 hours. I need to learn about this. I need to learn how this compressor or whatever works. Yeah. Or how do you split that up?
So for me, it's like time compression and learning how to like schedule out my day. Right. The thing is, it's like if you worked an office job, you'd have the meeting on 1 p.m. This at 2 p.m. It's like, just because I'm an artist don't mean that I shouldn't set my day up like that. Yeah. So I'm like, okay, from 9 to 8, 9 to 10, I'm gonna check out these new plugins I got and see what they do. Actually, Mixed by Ali was the one who put me on that. It's like, people be having all these plugins but don't know how they work. Yeah. So sometimes it's like, you know, you want to know as much about I don't know. It's like, so it's like, for me, it's like, I want to know as much what I got. Yeah. So I can assess.
Yeah. So 9 to 10, you hit that up.
And then, yeah, so I'm assessing all the time. And sometimes it's like administrative stuff, you know, like because when I was running my stuff all totally by myself, it was like Monday through Wednesday was admin days. So I would figure out all the paperwork stuff. I would figure out, I would send out emails, And then Thursday and Friday were the creative days, you know, or Friday through Sunday were the creative days, actually. Yeah. So for me, it was just, that was like how you manage your time. And I'm also definitely like cognizant of like going down wormholes. For me, it's like I'm a big advocate, a big proponent of 80-20 rule, you know, which is like, you know, how not only work hard, but work efficiently and work smarter. So what is, you know, the 20% that's the 80% of the thing?
Do you have anchor points in your day to keep you like, I realize that I'm so much more loosey-goosey when I don't have like, oh, I know I have to work out today, or I know I have to, when I wake up, go walk for an hour or do whatever. Yeah. Do you have these things in your day that keep you, so you're like, oh no, I just spent 3 hours on YouTube watching Tony Robbins and I should have been making beats, or I should have been responding to emails.
When I'm effective, I'm doing that. Like I realize too, sometimes when I have like commitments, I'm actually more effective and more efficient because in my mind, I'm already like, oh, I only have X amount of time to do this because then I got to go do this other thing. Yeah. So I've learned over time to proactively put those things in my day, whether it's like, I got to go to the gym by 11 o'clock. Yeah. It's almost like I set a schedule, like, okay, I have an hour for this. I also time compress and put constraints on things. So, with artistry or anything that's creative, you can easily be like, work on a song forever. Yeah. It's never done. Right. So for me, it's kind of like, I almost like, all right, I'm going to work on this for 3 days. And what happens after 3 days, that's it. It's done. Sometimes there's like the leeway or what have you, but I notice like when I have a directive, when I have an intention, I have something I'm aiming for, it's much easier to be creative and be efficient and effective. And what's the 80-20 again? Because sometimes it's like, even with mixing a song, you could spend 5 days, Mixed by Ali told me this is America. He mixed it like over like 24 times. Like they did all these revisions on it. And it's great. And he won a Grammy. Yeah. And it's like awesome. So it's like, it's like you gotta sometimes be like, all right, cool, let me work at this, but then also know when it's like the diminishing returns.
When you have to let it go. Yeah, I've been big on that now, even with this podcast. Is all about minimum viable product. It's like get the thing out, then iterate and improve on it. Because oftentimes that 20th mix doesn't sound any different than the 10th one to other people's ears. Yeah. Like you might notice like, oh man, the snare had just enough reverb on it that now it's perfect. And then the other person is just like, yeah, I don't even know.
What's that Thriller anecdote? They mixed Thriller, I think 99 times and they went with mix 3.
Yeah. No, it happens.
I've been hot.
It happens all the time. It's funny how much Thriller to me I use in my life in general when it comes to music, because even when it comes to excess, I'm just like, some of the greatest albums we think about Illmatic, you think about Thriller. These are 9-10 song projects.
Yep.
If I don't have
songs in the key to life, I believe.
Really? It's like if I don't have that, then I don't need any more. Like even if I have 15 that I think are great, it's like, no, let's make this 10 perfect. Let's make this 9, 11, whatever it is, and just go.
Well, that's also like the history of it, right? So again, my music nerd hat, most records were a certain length because they can only get a certain amount on the vinyl, right?
Technology.
And then what ended up happening, the reason why you were getting like 20 songs and all these big long projects was on a CD you can fit more information. Mm-hmm. And so it was almost like the artist had an opportunity to figure out like, what do you like? You like this, here's this. And it's like, essentially CDs back in the days was like $15, $14. So to justify you spending that amount of money, it's like, well, this track has 20, so I'm gonna get this 20 track CD.
But be clear, this was also a record label trick, because even all the way up to the deal that we signed in 2008 or 9, they still only paid you on 10 songs.
They only paid you on 10 songs.
So it doesn't matter. They were squeezing out more content on this thing. They were still paying you what the old, what it was anyway. Yeah, there's a piece of a record label contract, for those that don't know, where every album is considered a very specific amount of songs. And anything over it you can add, but they're still ever only paying you that limit. Yep. So if that limit is 10, 11 songs, which for the most part it is, every time you see these 13, 18, 19, 20 song albums, unless they're counting it as a double album, they're only getting paid on 10 or 11 songs. Yep. So get back, now that we're back in the music industry. So after Madden happens, Wax On, Wax Off does fairly well. What is the next step for you to continue on? Because I assume you got a taste of what licensing could be. Yeah. What are your next steps dipping in that and getting more placements?
2 things happen. I start to work with a lot of artists that are on Sony and at the time, Epic. And we're producing the record. And as a producer, I'm getting the front end. And I'm like, this is dope. And I'm super excited about the project. And then either the A&R would leave or get fired or some kind of way the album never came out. So then I would be like, oh, wow, these people's dreams, hopes, and everything is out the window. I didn't get my back end, but damn, that shit.
Explain to the people, because they weren't around for this era of abundance, what front end is.
Trying to make me feel old. No. Explain.
What front end is. What front end is.
It still happens, but it's like, literally, it's like usually, so when you are commissioned to do a project and you negotiate, or a song, even a show, you get a front end. It's upon signing that contract, you get, so say for instance, you're going to make $10,000 on this. They will give you $5,000 up front to start the project. And then you will get the second half once you turn in the masters, essentially. Once it's mixed and it's approved, And
a ton of producers were almost all able to exist through the 90s and even into the early 2000s, having gotten no placements except for, not as many placements as you need to now, but essentially could just live off of front ends because it was because you got so many of those through the years. As long as you were networked enough and in demand enough to be in the studio, then you could do extremely well with a very few amount of placements.
It was like, so I was baby bro, so I knew the producers ahead of me and above me, they were like really living off of that. And like sometimes, like it was like a whole circuit where there was like a new artist would be signed, and So Shark and Colin would get him for a couple days, Stargate would get it for another couple days, and then like Kovas will give you like 5 hours.
Yeah.
So that also allowed me to become faster too, because I'm like, oh, they got 3 days, maybe they'll get 3 songs or 2 songs. I got 5 hours. I'm like, yo, I'm gonna try to get as many songs in 5 hours as possible. So I would almost have this almost assembly line mentality with those artists. And they'd be like, yo, how'd you get 3 songs out of this artist? I'm like, yo, we just, went with the vibe. So, but I look at that, and that is the thing that actually helped me move forward. Like I look at all those hindrances as things that kind of helped me. It was almost like it's a video game.
The constraints allow you to really prove yourself in those moments. So you're working through a bunch of these Sony artists, and then where to the next? So they started getting placements.
So I started working in them, and then I started to see some of them start getting dropped. They wouldn't come out. So I was like, oh, I really don't know if I really want a record deal. Because it's like you kind of putting your whole faith in someone, So I put the records out by myself independently. But then knowing enough and studying how, records are made and put out on a major label, it's like, oh, I don't have a radio budget.
Yeah.
I don't have a way to kind of really push it to the nth degree, because there was MySpace and early Facebook, but it wasn't what it is now.
Yeah.
You kids got it good. But it wasn't that. So I was like, well, I want people to hear this. What's the easiest way for people to hear it? Like maybe television.
Yeah.
And then it was just like I took the initiative to kind of like having had the Madden connection, is to kind of just reach out to people like, yo, I have this material. At first, I was representing myself as another person. I'd be like, oh, this is Mike calling for Kovas. There's industry at the time. There were industry phone books basically, okay. And you could go online and you could probably pay like $125. Some of the emails were defunct.
It's almost like what is it? Who's who? Or
it's not. It's like the who's looking list, but like they literally just have A&R. That was just the lick. Like the people you pay for them, and some of the emails wouldn't work. Some of it would work, and because I wasn't going to, everybody was looking this direction. I was looking that direction, so no one was really reaching out at the time to music soups in that capacity. And then if they were, it was like music libraries that kind of had subpar music.
Yeah.
So it was like, oh, I'm bringing you like major label content, but you don't have all the red tape that you normally have. Because a lot of times the artist would sample 3 records. So you got to clear with those people. The label will own the master. then the publisher will own the master. So for me, I was 100% because I was writing it, I was producing it, I was mixing it.
Yeah.
I controlled everything. So I was able to go to them and be like, yo, and they'd be like, yo, this is just as good as the records they sending us from whatchamacallit, and we don't have to go through these red tapes. And if I call him on Friday night at 5 p.m., he can give me the okay, and I ain't got to track down all these people. So it became like a win-win scenario. And that was also the big epiphany in business for me, just in general. Like, how do I create win-wins? I think the old paradigm was like, how can I screw someone over so I can win? And then I felt like genuinely, like, I don't know. I just felt that that model was like it wasn't. It just seemed like there was something wrong with that. And for me, it was like, how can I create value, and how we both generate value from each other, and we feel like a win-win? Because if I give you value, you give me value, and it's great, we're gonna continue working together.
Yeah.
But if you felt like I got one over you and I screwed you over, or I felt like you screwed me over, I'm gonna fall back, and we're not gonna really do business that much. So I think from there it was like, like how, and I watched this Oprah interview, and she was always like, how do I provide service? And I was like, that's how I geek out. I'm like, yo, like, how do, like, success leaves clues, right?
Yeah.
How do they do it? And a lot of times people don't listen, I feel like, all the way. They want the look, but like, Oprah's whole big thing is like, how do I be of service?
I think oftentimes you also have to listen through what they're saying. Because I think that every successful person, it becomes really dangerous for people looking for those clues. Every successful person is telling a hero story because they're reconnecting, and then this happened, and then this, and then this happened. And like, they're
the best version. They tell you the best version of
the best version, and the version that they want to remember, because standing on the edge of something, right, in that moment versus 4 or 5 decisions later and being in a whole different space, you don't know what the other direction was. Like, it didn't happen. So what I'm saying is you made a right direction, but the other direction could have led to the same thing too. So oftentimes I think decisions are these very sort of A and B, black and white things where it may not have been that in the scenario. And because of that, there's a very skewed view of what success I think people have. But there are always nuggets in there, and they're the underlying sort of conversations, like you said, about being of service. That ultimately is like,
don't be a slave, but
no. It's being of service, like being able to be. I realized that super early on because I had the audacity to, when I was in college, just cold call A&Rs. Just call, I got the dopest motherfucking whatever you need to. And some of them actually allowed me to take a meeting because of how ridiculous I was.
That's crazy.
And nothing ever happened, but I would just be able to go up there. But what was funny was I'm banging my head against the industry door. I'm trying to get in. Nothing was happening. And then the day that I start working at T-Mobile and I'm selling the Sidekick, and I take the Sidekick into a music video and meet a producer by the name of Gerard, who was working with MC Light at the time, meet a young publicist by the name of Echo Haddix at the time. And,
oh man, Echo.
Shouts
out to Echo.
Yeah, shouts out to Echo and Gerard. Like, me having an item that was of use for people immediately changed all my relationships and my value proposition. So it wasn't like, oh, I got beats for you. It's no, we now have on equal footing this thing that you want that I have. And I never pushed any of the production stuff really down anybody's throat until like almost a year plus later. But I noticed immediately, I think, to try to just to even drill this down even further, is just like what I oftentimes people are looking to get put on, and that requires a level of altruism that I feel like is not in anybody realistically, like where they see you being on this side. I come across dope artists every day, and all I can really do is give them what I think is solid advice, because it's like, I can't really put you anywhere. You can come and hang out, but there's
It's
no
like the episode of Atlanta, Put Me On.
Yeah, there's nowhere that I can put you to. And most people that I know that are way more successful than me, it's the same sort of thing. Like when you see scenarios happen, when you see these young artists or these young producers or whatever, it's because the value proposition matched and it made sense, you know? And they found usefulness and found that person of service that they could utilize them in the situation. And then that happened. So it's like just trying to get on because you feel like you're dope never to me is
No, I totally agree. And I think it's two things, right? I think sometimes you ask the wrong questions to the right people. And sometimes you got to flip that.
Explain that further.
So like sometimes so a new artist comes out and they tour in your city or whatever, and you there and you got music and they're on their first album, maybe their first single, and you like, yo, put me on. They're not in a position to even help you. So you asking the wrong person for the wrong thing. Now, if you asked, hey, I got a verse for you, or maybe I got a bag, maybe come to the studio and jump on my mixtape, or I got some beats for you. Like those are opportunities that are a lot more easier for them to like open that door for you, right? Because sometimes people say no because they're embarrassed, because they don't want to look like they ain't the man. Sometimes people say no because they don't even know how they could begin to help you.
Yeah.
So I realized like it was much easier, just like with you having the T-Mobile thing, right? You going in and you be like, yo, I got this, whatever. Like, word, you took care of me. How can I take care of you? I think that is the key. Most people are coming in like, how can you help me? What can you do for me?
Yeah, you should help me because that's it. There's nothing after the
Here's the reality of the situation. Reality situation is not every pretty girl is going to be a model. Not every handsome man is going to be a model. Yeah. Not every dope musician is going to win a Grammy. So what is it about you that allows you to unlock that door, right? And like usually you're an overachiever. That's the other thing too. Like usually people get put on who are already doing it. Like it's not, because of SoundCloud and because of metrics and stuff like that. And, people are like, yo, they want you to do all these different things. Yeah, but they kind of wanted you to do that thing back in the days. Like Cash Money got that deal because they were selling a bunch of records on their own, doing it. And they got a really favorable deal because they were like, yo, why I got to do a deal with you?
Yeah.
I'm already making money.
Yeah.
So I think like you can't be short-sighted in a way, right? Like, here's the thing, right? If you want someone to do all the work, 9 times out of 10, they're going to make all the money. Like, even me as a producer, it's like sometimes it's like I can give someone a beat. I might be able to coach them. I might give them the things. And I might be even shepherd them even more down the process. But another thing is like if I feel like I'm working harder than you, I can't expend more energy on your thing than I do on my own things. Yeah. So you got to help those that help themselves in a sense.
Yeah, adding value and adding really unique value is probably one of the most important things that anybody I think that's coming up can do. That's looking to try to get kind of somebody that may be at a higher place to get them to pay attention. But ultimately,
that's the secret of life.
But I always tell people, the person you can provide the most value for is your peer half the time.
Oh yeah.
And the
No ID said that. No ID was talking to J. Cole as the anecdote. No ID was because J. Cole, I think at the time, was trying to get Beats to comment and get the Nas, and he's like, people ain't buying his beats, and he was like, yo, you really should get at your peers. And then at the time, he was like, oh, word. And then I guess a couple of days later, he came to the studio like, yo, I want you to meet this kid. He's new. He's from LA. His name is Kendrick. And I'm going to do a record with him. So J. Cole ended up doing that record on Good Kid, Mad City. And it's like, yo. And then Kendrick became Kendrick and yada, yada, yada. So like a lot of times it's like, it's like who's around you at your level because you guys can come up together.
There's always going to be a graduating class. There's always going to be... there's always going to be somebody in the space that is on the same level as you that's really going to make it. And it's oftentimes way better to build the relationships with those people that were in the trenches at the same time. Mm-hmm. A, because you have an understanding, especially of the era, and B, it's just so much easier and you can add so much more value because they're also looking for those sort of things. Yeah. But to jump back, so you got your cold calling A&Rs, your cold calling, I assume, music supervisors too.
Yeah.
And so you start getting those, you start getting your music in TV,
At
film.
first it was MTV because at the time, MTV was like, all TV shows and they had reality TV shows. So they needed a bunch of music. And it was a couple of music soups out here. I don't even know if they're still doing music stuff. What was his name? It was a TV show about Hawaii. So and he put it on and I was like, and he was like, yo, I love your stuff and da da da. Yeah. And I literally said, hey, I'm doing this. Basically, I was honest. I'm like, I'm doing this out of my bedroom in Brooklyn. Yeah. Like, I would love to do more of this stuff. And if you have other friends, supervisors you work with that you think will enjoy the stuff, would you please, send it to them? Yeah. Very humble, not trying to be bigger than what I was, still playing baby bro. And he was like, I think taken aback by the honesty of it, but also like, yeah. And he sent it to a couple guys, Greg and Jerry, and then it's like it's
honest audacity too, though, because it still is like, yeah, I'm doing this in my bedroom in Brooklyn, but your friends should hear it. But also being very upfront about what the situation was.
This is before everybody was doing it in their bedroom in Brooklyn. Like now, context-wise, everybody does it. Yeah. I remember people would come to do sessions, and I had a laptop on my desk. And people at the time was used to going to big studios, so they would look at me like I was a chump. Like, what you doing? Eventually, it wasn't until 2011 when Jay-Z and Kanye recorded that album, Watch the Throne, at the Mercer Hotel. And I was like, see, you can record anywhere. Yeah. I've been right this whole time.
Definitely, it's funny. Looking back at it, I remember that definitely legitimized all of us that were just making records wherever we could. Where it was like, oh yeah, now all the big guys can do it now too. Yeah. So that stuff starts happening, and then what makes you come out? What makes you move out to LA?
Well, I was coming back and forth for a bit, and then I would do like random Airbnbs or crash at friends' couches because the theory is like if these people like my music and I'm able to get them on the phone from New York, what if I just came and hung out for a couple days? Mm-hmm. Who else could they? Because when I would come out, they would be like, yo, you know who you should meet? You should go. I remember the first time coming out and it's like, MTV, I always had this crazy thing like, oh, MTV started on August the 1st. I was born on August the 1st. Yo, I need to be on MTV. Yeah. And I would come out to the campus. I did, there's actual footage of this. I had skipped school one day. And I went to TRL Live, and I ended up getting on TRL Live introducing Oh Dirty Bastard, and I think it was Ghetto Superstar. Hilarious. So, and actually, that's another crazy story. So I think along my journey, there's always been these like little glimmers of hope or light. That's like, oh, cool. Let me see if I can maximize this. Yeah. How can I make this more? Because it wasn't like I had this like well thought out plan of like, yo, I'm gonna just come in and just do all TV licensing stuff, and didn't know like that was the wave of the future. Like, but it was just like at the time it was like the only way I could probably promote my music effectively.
And it was making immediate money.
Yeah. I was like, oh, that's a return on investment immediately. So, and because everyone else was all bogged down in either pub deals or sampling a whole bunch of records, it was like, yo, mine's 100% and blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And then it just snowballed from there. So then it was like, oh, I'll come out here for a week. I'll come out here. And then I had friends who was starting to bubble because I had produced on all these records on Sony or whatever that never really came out. So I knew like, Kojak, who ended up doing Kesha and all these different things. So so I would come out and hang out with them, and they were like in the big boy studios, and they would say, come to Conway and hang out. So again, baby broing it, I'm like chilling. I was never egoed out that I wouldn't like, cause I'll go into a room sometimes where I think sometimes people are scared to go into a room where they ain't the man. sometimes people, like, I'll go in situations that's like, maybe my status or my catalog or my credentials, I shouldn't even be in here, right? But I'm like, yo, I want to see what's popping. Like, what's good, Or maybe there's a new skill set that I can learn, or maybe there's something new that that's applicable to what else I'm working in. Like, I just go off the energy of like, oh man, like, I'm interested in that. Let me see what that is. And I do like little 6-week experiments. Like, if I'm interested in something, let me try it for 6 weeks to see if I like it. Because I never want to be like, man, I should have. Maybe if I had. So that's my own little hack. For
what
me,
allows
like, not
you
having like regret.
What allows you to humble yourself in those moments though, and not kind of go in there and beat your chest with the stuff that you have done to get noticed?
So I definitely, I think like this weird thing. I was like, I have this weird karma thing where it's like when I had that record deal at such a young age, and then I was like, yo, I'm the man, and it didn't happen. Part of me, lightweight, even though Tommy Boy went bankrupt, like part of me was like, because I was egoed out. See, I shouldn't have been so egoed out. It's almost like God and the universe was checking me in that regard. It's like, yo, man. So I think also, even to this day, like a lot of times when I feel like I make a misstep, it's like, I'm always analyzing, am I doing this out of ego, or am I doing this because I really want to do it, or I can provide value, or I want to help someone? I think now more than ever, everybody's feeding their narcissistic ways. They're like, oh, me. And it's like, I love the project. Do I like the project? Does it challenge me? Is it something I feel like I could provide value to? So I think that little like bit of like, practicing Buddhism and I read a book called Ego is the Enemy by Ryan Holiday, which is amazing. And it's like, yo, a lot of times it's like people's ego are their downfall. So with that being said, I don't have a problem going into a room and you not knowing what I do. In fact, I'm probably going to get a better idea of how you are as a person. Because if you know what I do or what I've done, it's easy for you to be nice to me. It's easy for you to be like, oh, word, da. Because, you can get something out of it. But if you don't have any idea who I am as a person, in that moment, I get to see who you are. And if you find out what I do, and now you flip the script, now I'm like, oh, now I really know who you are.
Yeah. What, that's super useful out here, especially. And so your LA trips are getting longer and longer and longer. And then one day you're just like, it's time to make the move.
Yeah, I was like, I kept going back to New York, and it kept being a snowstorm. I was like, what the hell? I was like, all right, New York, I get it. You know what
it's
I'm saying?
Time to go.
So I was like, let me. And then again, even when I came, it was just like a test. I was like, all right, I'm gonna give myself like 8 months and take stock in 8 months. And if it's not where I needed not moving how I needed to move, I'll just go back. Kept my apartment, subletting it. And even if it was quiet for 6 months, that 7th month, something would happen. And I'm like, okay, it's time to, you know what I'm saying? I'll try to, it was a lesson in letting go and letting God and just be like, unclench. And that's that whole thing about energy where I realize how powerful that is like, if your energy is frantic and like, I got to make this happen, it's like, it almost like makes everything around it that same way. But if it's like, okay, let me just kind of be easy. Let's just see how it shakes out.
Do you think that's something specific to LA though? Because I feel like when I first touched down here, both times that I've come down here, back in 2002 and then again in 2012, it was, there's a New York mentality of getting out here and getting it and really being on it. And out here, you're forced to slow down because it just doesn't operate at that speed. Do you think that helped in understanding that?
That's the part of the podcast where the two New Yorkers bash LA. Like, yo,
no, it's not even bashing LA. This is literally just talking about that ability to be able to remove yourself from the speed that you're used to in New York because everything is so A-B.
Yo, New York, it's like, I think it's a legitimate statement that you make it in New York, you make it anywhere, because in New York there's so much going on, it's so hectic, and it's like the rent's so damn high. It's like you trying to every month make your rent, and you ain't got time for a lot of like the BS. Yeah. You ain't got time to worry about this, that, and that, and the third, and that. So sometimes it's like you come out here and it's like, wow, you can get a really nice spot for like almost less than what you would pay for a shoebox.
Not much less though.
Yeah, but
you'll get a bigger spot.
And sunshine, and you can go to the beach, and so it allows you a quality of life that's a little bit different. That allows you to, but with that, you get distracted. People get distracted. I also say that this is like the city of dreams in a way, where a lot of people come here to make it whatever making it to them is.
So what is success for you?
It's being, well, it goes back to the hierarchy of needs, right? So for me, it's having my loved ones and feeling loved and appreciated, right? And knowing the difference between like fake, brittle popularity love and like real, actual love and compassion. And I think people confuse the two a lot. The other thing is having security, but also versatility. Like that's what I love about being a producer. It's like I could go in and make these different things and being creative, you know, and being self-sufficient to be able to kind of call my own shots. Yeah. Like I would love to be able to be like, wow, I would love to become a billionaire by creating win-win scenarios. I think when everybody's more focused on themselves as opposed to outward, it's like things get disheveled. And we get in a really hectic, frantic, trying time. And when you get back to the point of like, yo, you my brother, and I might have a piece of the puzzle that'll help you, and you may have a piece of the puzzle to help me in my journey, why don't we help each other? Yeah. And then same on and same on. But a lot of times people want to be like, I got this puzzle, and you ain't got the puzzle. Screw you.
I also think oftentimes, whether it be in the workplace, whether it be wherever, people aren't comes back to empathy. Like they just aren't cognizant or feel the need to be responsible for somebody else's, where their goals are. And so they don't end up getting the best out of that person in a situation because they weren't taking into account what that person's individual objective was. You know, like you could see somebody, you can be like, oh yeah, I would love beats from that person, from you, but they might be trying to do something totally different. They really wanted to sing on a record. Yeah. You know, so many studio sessions I know have gotten weird like that because there's the one person there that's like, but I just want to drop this rap verse. But it's just like, yeah, but you're super dope singing, so you should just do that. Yeah. And it's figuring out a way to balance both, where it's just like, yeah, drop the verse and let's get the hook. And maybe we can get a hook and a verse out of it. That'd be dope. But it's being able to put aside what you think as a producer, or what you think as someone who's organizing that situation, what you think is the perfect combination of everybody's value proposition, and sometimes just allowing it to kind of let them show what they.
Well, I mean, I'm always, when I work with artists, my whole thing is like, best idea wins. It don't have to be my idea. Best idea wins. And if we're not under a crazy time, like we in the studio and we gotta leave, it's like, yo, put down the rap, see what you think. Because if it's worst case scenario, we'll just erase it. Yeah. So I think I try not to be super rigid. Like I you know, doing my whole tutelage.
It's crazy times.
What's going on? We got some ghosts that's coming to the podcast.
Winds.
Winter
is coming.
Yeah, right. I would see producers that literally would like beat, almost like a coach, beat the artist down to get a certain performance out of them. And I don't know, I guess because I've been in front of the mic and behind the mic, it's like I know what it's like, that vulnerability of being in front of the mic and not knowing like what's going on. So I think there's like that also empathy, compassion there to be like, yo, okay, what do you think? How you feel? And sometimes we need to get through this thing to get to this thing. Yeah. So maybe you need to get that rap off to get it out your system to go over here to do the singing thing. I know, like I remember his name was Walt. Walt was at Atlantic Records, and I never was big on my singing voice. And I had a couple records that I was singing on. Actually, one of the records that was like in this movie Prom Night was me singing the whole record. He's like, you should just do that. What are you doing? You playing. You could just do that. And it's like crazy because this is actually a couple months before Drake exploded So Far Gone. And I was like, nah, I'm not really a singer. I want to rap more and da da da. And he was right. And Drake came in and did it crazy, but who knows? Like, it still might have been the same thing. And then it's funny because my last project, I ended up just singing the whole record.
Yeah.
And it probably was one of my most successful projects. Well, I mean, they all had.
What's the difference between those two periods? From obviously a decade ago now, talking about those first things and the Love Disrupt.
I think Love Disrupt, I kind of like, it's one of those things where it's like, again, it's like, oh, it's cool, I see sounds as colors and da da da. It's a cool story, bro. But I think it's like learning how to paint with those colors even better and more vividly.
So your confidence went up.
Confidence went up. I learned how to drive the car even better. I'm now I can finesse with it, right? It's like one of those things was like, yo, you didn't, I can do this with it too now. But it's also like the confidence of also not even caring, right? If I look back, I'm like, oh, I was living for other people's eyeballs. I was like, I can't sing on a record. That's not what you do.
Yeah.
I got to rap. Get bars, son. Bars. And then it was like, at that point in my life, it was like I did these syncs. I had produced these artists. I ended up like doing records with Demi Lovato and doing Camp Rock and doing all this stuff. Like, it's like I just really have nothing to prove at that point. For myself, it was like, how do I challenge myself now? How do I... Also, when I wrote the record, it's funny, I wrote it right before the whole election stuff went down. And I just saw the energy and the feeling in the world. It's like, yo, everybody's kind of angry. Everybody's kind of going at each other's throat. And then I had this, at the time I was listening to like punk rock because it's like trying to get inspiration for different things. And I was like, yo, punk rock was always counterculture. Well, our culture is kind of angry now. So the most counterculture thing would be talk about love, and put a little bit, being more responsible with what I say and put out in the universe as an artist.
Yeah.
So that's, long story long, it was just like, yo, let me put this feeling and energy I feel like needs to be put out there. And I felt like the best way to express it was actually singing it.
Okay.
And then it's funny because like all these like people who I work with who like, yo, I kind of like your singing voice better than that other stuff. I was like, for all these years and you ain't tell me? So Walt, you were right, fam. 12 years later.
12 years later. Nah, that's funny. But
and we got the hat line.
Yeah. So then another funny thing happens with that, and we talked about it, which was where all of a sudden you had this piece of merch that just loosely was connected that then becomes a super successful thing for you, just kind of randomly. Do you think that the entire project as an idea just connected better when you let go of some of those isms that were holding you back, and now it's just like, oh yeah, people can buy into all of this as vulnerable stuff.
I mean, the thing is like it's like if I go back and actually even talking to you now, retracing steps, when I would let go and I would let it flow and not be so, constrained about it, everything opens up, man. Everything opens up. It's like meditation. It's like breathing. It's like namaste. It's like, yo, if you just kind of unclench a little bit and let it flow naturally, it's like you just stop and listen.
You got to stop clenching your butt cheeks, or you're going to have hemorrhoids from that. You've just been out here clenched way too long. It's like, oh, I'm not going to let it out.
People be out here getting them ulcers and all that other stuff because it's like it's so like, again, it was just that the ability of just being free. And then it was like, okay, cool, I'm gonna promote this record. I wear a lot of hats. Let me make my own hat. And then it's like I made the hat, and then like I think other people resonated with the project because they also sensed that we need a little bit more compassion and love. And then I also ended up doing it's like all parallel. I was doing at the same time I'm finishing up the project, I get asked to do a campaign with Dunkin' Donuts and Odell Beckham Jr. And when you do commercials and everything, you can't wear no labels or whatever. And I was like, but I'm gonna wear my hat though. It's my own hat. Like, I'll sign off clearance for this.
Yeah.
And they were like, we love it. Yeah, wear the hat. And then so I think all those things combined, like the hat, the commercial ends up winning the Clio and we on Sports Center. I made it on the New York Giants website, fam, and I didn't have to kick or pass a football, which is crazy.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And it's like, I'm a Giant fan too, so that's like dope.
How'd that come together? Was that just the network of music supervisors that you had built over the years, or was it just another random?
That came. I did a project for Comedy Central, so because people were aware of what I did, certain people were like, "Yo, I'm working on this parody record. Would you do the music for it?" It was Colton Dunn, who's actually on NBC Superstore. And I did a project with him for Comedy Central, and we did the music, and he rapped. And I think it was the director of that project was having something come up where he had a campaign, and I think they were trying to figure out how to make it work. And he had just did this video, and he's like, "Yo, who did this with you?" And he was like, "Yo, my man Kovas." Word? And then he was like, called me up and was like, "Yo, I'm working on this campaign," and I didn't really know much about it. And originally I was just supposed to just do music, and that was it. And I was like, "Cool, I got you." And then started to get into the creative talks with the ad agencies and everything like that. And I was like, "Hey, maybe this might be sauce." Yeah. And kudos to them for even listening to me, right? Because it's like, again, sometimes people just could just easily be like, "Yo, no, we got it from here, thanks." And I'd be like, "Yo," because they were like, "Yo, the concept was Odell Beckham, who's a world-class athlete, wide receiver, goes in the studio and he can play piano, and he, because was posted on Instagram, I guess, him playing piano and dancing, and they were like, 'Yo, maybe he writes a song about cold brew coffee.'" Right. Okay. And I was like, "Well," I was like, "All right, cool." And then I was like, "Yo," they were like, "Maybe we'll have a band in the studio," and I'm like, "Well, that's not really how it goes down. Like, when you are playing an artist's records, this is how it happens." And I kind of walked them through the process. And they're like, "Huh." And then I even showed them just videos, like when I'd be in the studio and stuff like that. And then they were like, "Oh, dope." And then they were trying to cast the producer. And I think they were like, "Why don't you just be the producer? You got a SAG card, right?" And it was funny because it got pushed. The commercial got pushed, and this happened. We shot the commercial on his only day off, and it was the day after he got hurt in training camp. So it was a lot of pressure, and it was one of those things where it's like he had no more windows in his schedule. So like, what you get is what you get. And the commercial, multi-million-dollar commercial, everything's on the line. And it's like, it could either go, hey, and I was like, my whole thing's like, oh, maybe I can meet him a couple days before, kind of get like the camaraderie going and da-da-da-da. And they're like, there's no time. It's like when he walks in the commercial and says what's up to me, that's the first time I met him. Yeah. And also, this is a spoiler, but I think people know, like, I wrote everything. Yeah. So all he would have to do was come in, learn the parts, and do it. It wasn't no time to actually write a song. Yeah. So I would have to approve the jingle, approve what we're actually saying. So it felt in the commercial we were creating it on the spot. It was funny because the comments was like, "Yo, Odell's brilliant. He's a genius. He came up with that, da-da-da." And I'm like, I came up with that, but But again, not being egoed out, because I can easily be like, "Yo, I did that."
Yeah, and playing the part. Yeah, the people who need to know that you did that, and everybody else enjoys the product.
Exactly. I won a Clio award from it, which is crazy.
A Miss Clio award, huh?
Miss Clio. We'll call me now. A Clio, and that was like as again that, and then that was like a little bit like the Taylor Swift thing. It was like the same thing. Like, oh, I won these awards from just doing these different things.
And that almost came together the same way too, where there was another director that reached out from some previous work.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So it was like it was fun. No, it's actually the editor. He does a lot of the director's videos. And they were like, Taylor Swift had just shot. I know you're gonna the video. I know you would be trouble. I know I messed that up. Sorry, Taylor. But they were like, "Yo, she actually recorded this poem on set in the back of the van on the way to the next location, and she wanted to have it in the video. And then they were like, the editor was like, "Yo, instead of using some cheesy library thing, I think you can do this. Would you be into doing like a orchestral score type of thing? It's like, you know, it's kind of like this really solemn poem. It's like, I was like, yeah, I'll give it a shot." And then again, I think because I wasn't so pressed on it, I wasn't even like thinking like, oh, this is Taylor Swift, this is my break. Yeah. I was just like, no, just whatever. Yeah. And I had put this thing with cellos and whatever, and I was like, get my Hans Zimmer on. I was like, yo, let's do this. I could do more than just hip hop. And he was like, yo, I love it. And he put it with the dialogue, and it was dope. He's like, I love it, but I got to play it for the director. Yeah. We don't know. I was like, okay, cool. The director saw it. Yo, I love it, but I can't, you know, Taylor got to see it because it's her poem. And then she's like, I love it. And then next thing I know, it came out, and then the video was like #1 and 100 and something.
Yeah,
million,
and also won a VMA or something like that.
Won an MTV VMA video, which was like crazy. And it was like, you know, I don't know. I honestly just believe that coming from a place of goodwill and just trying to serve and how can I provide value, as opposed to like me, how can I get on, yo fam, it changed the whole energy of everything for me. You know, I think, you know, we from New York, Brooklyn, you like, yo man, put me on fam. And then after a while you realize like, how is that working out for you? You know, you gotta assess. People gotta take a step back and assess, how is that working out for you? And if it's not working out for you, maybe you should try another way of doing things.
Let's leave it at that, man. Thank you so much, Kovas. Man, continued success. There's a million things we could continue to talk about, but
I know.
Let's save it for multiple parts. Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Yo, I'm proud of you for doing this.
Finally.
No, you fucking doing this, man. Like, think like,
figure it out.
What's it like? What I did mine. You did mine 2 years ago, and I still didn't put it out.
Well, we'll blame it on that random person wherever she is.
All right, thank you. Peace.